think we're actually live, Rasheed.
Hi, and good to see you there, Tim. Good to see you. Looking forward to kicking off in a couple of minutes'
I
time.
am. I am. And today's live chat. Obviously, we planned it to coincide with Valentine's, but I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, issues that are important to everyone, and really good to be back, fully fit, and back on the live chats with you as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Hi there, everyone. As you're settling in, we've got about a minute or two to go, so you've got time to quickly grab that cup of tea if your kettle's just about to boil upstairs, or to just get yourself settled in your favorite armchair. And we're going to be kicking off soon. We're going to be talking about love in all of its carnations.
Yeah, I like the way I say that. Love.
Love. It's the singer in me. It's the old singer in me. You know, I can still crew.
The soul comes out, mate. You can't keep it. You can't keep it hidden away.
Absolutely, no, you can't. I'm loving the pictures, by the way. Kids'
Yeah,
pictures.
did I tell you that? I think I mentioned last time. The whole house, literally. I mean, I could probably like plaster every square inch with children's painting,
Wonderful, amazing.
inside and out. But yeah, no, I mean, my daughter especially. I mean, she comes home from school with like bags just full of like. I mean, I'm surprised they have so much paper at the school. But it's really cool, you know. They love it, and it really adds like just a bit of warmth and something.
Right. Well, I'm making it that it's the hour, 7 o'clock UK time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to hand over the reins to the man himself, Mr. Tum Kazunga, on the controls.
Excellent. Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome. Just to say, obviously, welcome to all of our regulars who've been joining us these last few months for these monthly live chats. Rasheed and I just love doing them, and love having you all to watch them, of course. Big welcome as well if you're new to Evolved Heart and this is the first time you've actually come across Rasheed and I chatting. We do this sort of thing once a month through Google. It's called a live chat. This is live. Okay. And we talk about all sorts of things, and Rasheed shares like a lot of good information, and I really grill him. Essentially, and try and draw out all the nuggets we can. And if you have any questions to share during this, the procedure is always the same. You can type them into the comment box on the blog post where you're watching this, or if you're actually on Facebook as well, you can find us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Evolved Heart, and you can ask a question there. I'll be monitoring that, and any questions, I'll make sure I pass them on to Rasheed. So Rasheed, before we kick off, just want to tell everyone how have you been and how's your week been?
Very well. It's been a really good week, really exciting week. Just come back working with one of my clients who works with very high-flying clients. So my watchword for this week is really focus. Has been a thing that's come up a lot. I was working also with a photographer earlier on. I think that very often people, we're now into February. January we're starting off talking about New Year goals, resolutions, and starting up stuff. And I think that now, the word focus, I think is a very useful word, because I think that very often, once we get into the year, people can lose focus or not know what they're focusing on, or be trying to do too many things. And so I think this word focus is my watchword for the week. What's really important, and focusing on that, and not being too distracted by all the noise of stuff that's going on. So that's my watchword for this week. Focus.
That's a good one, I reckon. Focus. We should all like kind of take that to heart. I know I should definitely. The thing that actually caught me on a not so serious note, but I've really been fascinated by this whole like horse meat scandal.
Oh yeah,
that's been brewing, and I think it's quite apt as well about what we're talking about today, and about relationships, and actually just the mess these chains and these companies have made of their relationships. I mean, there's literally no trust whatsoever now in this whole food chain, and there's been a whole range of funny jokes and images flowing over the social media, which have been quite amusing. But on a serious note, it is a bit, it's a bit odd to think that we had this whole big mad cow scare a few, obviously like 10 plus years ago, 20 years ago almost, and you'd have thought people would have learned lessons, right?
Yeah, you would have thought so. You would have thought so. It's interesting though, is lots of these things they might say is labelled other meats, and then what is that other meat? So is it, how disingenuous necessarily is it? I mean, the other angle is that, this is just from a different kind of angle altogether. I mean, it'll be interesting for us to learn how healthy is horse meat compared to another kind of meat. I know that, there's one thing, you don't want to be misleading your customers, but it'd be very interesting to know what is their what's the level of the health benefits of all the different types of meats that it is that we eat. And it's interesting, we're conditioned to eat some types of meats and not other meats. And so, you know, it's interesting, I've got an interesting perspective on this as a vegetarian. It's interesting, isn't it, how we relate to meats and the foods that we eat. But I think it does mean that we've got to be even more mindful about, on the one hand, about, you know, what it is that we're eating. And it's very important, as you say, that if somebody's a company, you've got to bear in mind that relationships take years to build, but they take just minutes to lose, and to regain that trust can take a long time. I used to work in media and PR, and I remember working some of these food scares when I used to work for the Witch Stable magazines and so on. So, you know, every now and then it seems that we'll get one of these kind of scandals that does then challenge our relationship to a particular industry. So there's, you know, and we'll get on later on today in terms of, we're going to start off talking about, you know, self-love. We'll get on to talking about then family love and all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to be talking about love in that broader, and relationships rather, in that broader context about trust, relationships, be it with the place that you work, people you buy from, and so on. So I'm sure that we'll kind of touch on all things relationships, because really the thing I'll say to them is that everything, I mean, the precursor to this conversation today is that, to me, everything is about relationships. Once we as a human being find ourselves in form, everything is about relationships. Your first experience of relationship is, you're a kid, there might be your parents, there might be your siblings, there might be other family members, and then you go out and you're meeting people and you're developing relationships with them. So everything, absolutely everything in life is about relationships, starting with your relationship to yourself. So that's why I'm so excited about today's conversation. Awesome. About all things to do with relationships.
Okay, no, that sounds good. And perhaps at one time, you know, I know we're getting a full diary in terms of what we want to speak about in these monthly live chats, but, you know, the whole issue about relationships with food and you know, etc. You know, might be something we can look at in another time. But definitely. Yeah, no, definitely really interesting. So moving on then to today's chat. So what we're looking at, everyone, as Rasheed touched on, it's all about relationships today. Rasheed's given you his point of view that everything, and he means everything, is about relationships. I'll be really interested to hear his take on all of that. And what we've done for you today is really break this up into three what we call circles. So the first circle, as Rasheed spoke about, is looking at the relationship with yourself. And I know, Rasheed, this is really for you like foundational aspect of everything. So I'd be keen to get your views on that. And then move on to the second circle, which is to do with relationships with your family, your friends, your partner, your loved ones. You know, the things that I think kind of give you that soul food, isn't it, when you go through life? They give you that strength. And also, there's a few, an outro. We're going to look at a fantastic campaign that Rasheed introduced me to, and I was really privileged to learn about this, and we're really, I think it'd be great to share this with you guys the day before Valentine's Day. Then we'll come back to wrap this up with the last circle, which is looking at relationships in work, professional relationships, whether it's with your own company or you work for someone else, whatever the case might be. And obviously, you've got a few questions and a bit of back and forth banter. That sounds good. I think we should kick off, Rasheed, and move on straight to the first circle, which is, of course, relationships with yourself.
Yeah, this is where it all starts and it ends. You know, that your how you experience life and how you feel about life is going to depend on your relationship to yourself. And so almost regardless of your circumstances, one of the things that you'll notice, that there are those people in life, no matter what's going on, who seem to be well adjusted to life. They seem to be optimistic about life. They seem to have a positive outlook. They seem to be connected, even though they may not have much money in the bank, even though they may have gone through all sorts of difficulties. So the first thing is about your relationship to yourself. So this is what I want to talk about first of all. And it's interesting culturally, for example, here in the UK, you know, there's a saying that people often will say, isn't it? They'll say, oh my goodness, that person seems to love themselves. And we talk about, when we talk about love, self-love, it's often with a little bit of a derogatory kind of term. That person loves themselves. They seem to be in love with themselves. But actually, if you don't tend to have a love for who you are, if you don't care about yourself, if you don't care of yourself, about yourself, and if you don't feel that you are worth love, it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to attract love. It's going to be really difficult for you to give love. And I think that obviously lots of people's experience of this may depend on how it is that they've been brought up, what kind of lessons that they've been told, the kind of messages that they were told by parents, guardians, or whoever it is that brought them up. So as you're listening to this, your whole upbringing will probably have shaped the degree to which you have been encouraged to believe in yourself, to love or care about yourself, whatever word around that or not, and whether you've had that nourishing foundation or not, it's going to be down to you at some point to take the reins and to realize that, you know what, I have worth in of who it is that I am, and for you to be able to see your good points and your qualities and your innate value. And so for me, that's really the starting point. And this is what I talk about to them all the time when I use this term that I use all the time, this become who you are. So sometimes there might be some brushing off all the noise about what other people think that you should be or that you're not, and just to accept yourself, and just to really, the quickest route to this is just to accept yourself as you are now, and to embrace yourself and to embrace life, warts and all, with your perceived strengths, with your perceived weaknesses, and to realize that, you know, I have value in of myself, and I'm going to at least give myself a chance to move forward in life. Because if you don't begin to foster that self-love, then you're going to really struggle. There's all sorts of ways. I can now almost hear a question, yeah, how do you do that if you haven't had that? There's all sorts of ways about that to do that. You know, one of the quickest ways is, you know, go out and find those books, those literature, the self-development programs, whatever catches your eye, or stuff on the internet that you feel that nourishes your soul. For some people, it might be just going out into nature that you might find that just gives you a good connection to yourself and makes you feel good about yourself. For somebody else, it might be going out there and doing some exercise that makes you feel good about yourself. For some people, it might be music. I used to be young, very musical. Music used to give me a good sense of who it is that I was in myself and make me just feel good. For somebody else, it might be about dance, or all sorts of different ways in which we can begin to connect to ourselves. And for some people, it might well be about their spirituality, or about their faith, or about, you know, connecting with others. That gives them, funny enough, that gives them a sense of their kind of self. Whatever it is that for you, or you know, just being still and being quiet. Sometimes it will require actually turning down that external noise. Sometimes it might be that you've just heard so much noise, you're listening too much to what the magazines are saying, what the media is saying, what the websites are saying. Sometimes you need to turn down that noise so that you can begin, perhaps for the first time, to hear your own heart. And if you are struggling with this journey, there is lots of stuff on Evolved Heart that is exactly about this self-love kind of stuff. So if you're really struggling with that, I really encourage you to spend some time with the top videos, spend some time looking at the articles. Every single one of these articles will have an element of this kind of self-love stuff about it. And perhaps I'd also add to this term, you know, seek out those people who it is that you know, like, and trust, and ask them to give you some feedback. Because if, for example, you haven't been nourished with those positive messages when you're growing up, it might be important for you to seek those out now. You know, for example, I was with a client of mine earlier on today, and somebody came up to our table. We were in a very high-to-do, you know, private members club linked to a top restaurant. And this lady who ran this particular club came up to my client, and she gave my client some positive feedback. My client glowed. And you could see some of this self-love coming back. And I pointed out to both of them how important this giving people positive feedback is. So again, you're going to need to start saying positive things to yourself. Start pointing out, start recognizing your good points. If you're always commenting on the bad points or the things that need to be improved on, what are things that you do well? What are the positive things about you? What are the things you really like about yourself? What have other people said? Because we tend to become conditioned to only remembering. We tend to remember the insults or the put-downs more than we do the praise. Your job is to start hearing the praise. Like if I was coaching you and you're an athlete, I would be starting pinpointing the things that you do really well. So seek out those people you know, like, and trust. Ask them to give you feedback. Ask them to tell you about the things that it is that you like. And that will begin to nourish this bit of you that begins to feel good about yourself, because you are the key. If you're sat here and you're thinking, okay, you know, I'm tuning into this thing now because I'm wanting to gain a partner, or I'm listening to this thing now because I always seem to be attracting negative relationships, or I'm here now, I always seem to get into battles at work. It starts with you. The more it is that you love you, the more it is that you appreciate your strengths, your skills, and so on, the more it is that you're going to feel open to love and be available to love, and you're going to project that out, because you're going to be projecting out negativity otherwise. Expect it. Expect love. Be open to love. Throw your arms around life and love it. You know, throw your arms around life, I often say, not through fear, but through love. That's the invitation here. You know, that's the invitation.
Awesome. You know what I like there as well, particularly, and it's all about that inner conversation, isn't it? That, you know, people always talk about, and, you know, you have these, maybe not so literal, but, you know, the voice in your head that either is feeding you that something positive, reinforcing a positive image of yourself, or unfortunately, in many cases, you know, something that's not so positive about yourself, you know. But I think one of the things that I've learned, you know, getting to know you and by this whole project that we've been involved with in Evolved Heart, been a big journey for me as well, going internally and listening to this and really understanding that, you know, we all have that power to decide which voice to hear, which one not to. And I think your tip there about, you know, listing what it is that you do really well, you know, whether it's a skill, your talent, you know, your capacity to just make other people smile or whatever it is, you know, being aware of those and just thinking of those a bit every day, not in a boastful way, but just to say, hey, you know what, I have this.
Yeah, when people have got very low self-esteem, you know, you're absolutely right. When people have got low self-esteem and all these kind of words to them, I often get them, or when I'm just wanting to build up their confidence generally as a coach, I will get them to do some of these exercises, getting feedback from others, writing positive words about themselves. Because the difference between people who are confident and the people who are really have a good relationship with themselves is that they have that as their focal point. They keep those things in mind, and where people don't, they tend to remember all the negative things that they've been told about themselves. It's really important. They say that 70% of the messages we receive every day are negative. You know, if you watch, for example, the news, the nature of news is that we tend to be drawn to conflict and what's not right and so on. So sometimes when people are on this journey, you might need to, as I said before, turn down all the noise. Turn down all the noise. Stop reading the newspapers. Stop watching the news. The weather may be more valuable for you than watching the news. Open yourself up to life itself. Go out, enjoy the beauty of life, the park, the sea, the ocean, whatever it might well be. Reconnect yourself to that joy of life and get that positive feedback from, and that will become really, really, really nourishing. And as we move on soon, we're going to now begin to move on to, you know, when we talk a little bit soon about this is where a lot of the nugget of it is going to be about family relationships and partner relationships. Then we'll be talking about these other kind of friendships and so on, and I'm going to begin to talk about how it might be important to ramp up some relationships and even to turn some other relationships down that may not be serving you. So, but the starting point is with you, embrace you, love what you do, and then be open. You know, you might be the time where you need to open up the windows and the doors to life.
Absolutely. And so before we move on to that next circle, just one thing I came across actually, which, you know, I found really interesting thought, and, you know, I can't remember the website, but if I dig it out, I'll make sure I put it down as a link on the blog post. But basically, it was all about a challenge, which was to go 30 days without thinking something or saying something negative either about yourself or about someone else.
Great.
And as soon as you catch yourself doing that, you then, you know, you go back to like day one. And the whole idea behind that was, you know, it's something that is actually quite difficult to do, but when you get into the habit of it, you just find that your mindset sort of shifts. So it's something that actually I was quite keen to try out as a challenge, you know.
And it leads us beautifully into the second circle now, your relationships with your inner kind of circle, friends, family, and so on. Friends and family. Let's maybe start off with family, you know, Tim. And the reason why I say with family is that somebody's probably going to find themselves in a family unit of whatever kind. It might be with their biological family, or it might be with a family that if they've been adopted or if they're fostered, it doesn't matter, the family, you know, however it is. So that first circle that we're talking about, somebody's relationship to themselves, will probably have been influenced by that circle, the family in the broadest sense, circle that they had. And what kind of messages that they gave about themselves, because your family might give you your name, they might give you ideas about yourself and the world, and whether you're good, bad, smart, stupid, all these messages that, if you think about it, creep in during our childhood. So again, if you're a parent listening to this, exactly what you said there, Tom, is really important. Be very mindful about the messages that you say to your kids. By all means, say to them that they're smart. If you're going to say to your kids that you're stupid, think twice about it, because these things do really stay with us. So really be mindful about that kind of stuff. Again, think about it yourself as an adult. How do you feel when people have given you praise, and how do you feel when they've given you criticism? It's exactly the same thing with kids. Each time we tend to get praise, we tend to grow a little bit, we tend to feel a little bit more confident. Each time we're told something negative, we you know, and the voice can become quieter, and we kind of hold ourselves a little bit more hunched up. We're not as kind of confident with ourselves. So I think one of the things is, as you find yourself, if you're listening to this and you are an adult, you may have had a good growing up experience, then be grateful and maybe give some positive feedback to those family members and those friends, those people who have been there. If your family relationship situation has been difficult and so on, maybe one of the first things to do is to realize, okay, from now, perhaps to, in your own mind, draw a line and say, from here on in, I'm prepared to be on my own side. And bear in mind that sometimes we can go through generations after generations because we've had a bad experience. We give our kids or whoever it is we're around a bad time. But remember, very often how people will have brought you up will be dependent on how they've learned and how it is that they've been conditioned, the messages that they've given. So there's no point kicking back. You know, it's a little bit like if you've got if you bought a dud phone from your mobile phone shop, the chances are that the dud may well have come from the shop before the manufacturing thingy. So kicking back at your parents may not be the actual place. You know, you might need to go several rungs back to find that route, and that can be very useful. Sometimes I've got a Become Who You Are audio talk that talks about this, just becoming back at peace with yourself. So this is, again, the value of the third circle of the work. When you realize that you've got worth in of yourself, your dependence on others for external feedback, although it's nice, doesn't become quite as dependent. You have an inner sense of your own worth, which is hence self-worth, as opposed to something else worth, self-worth. So from here, once you realize, okay, we're all given all these messages about whether we're good, bad, and right and wrong, means that you'll become more empathetic to the human condition. And it can make you think, okay, hang on a minute now, how am I treating my kids? How am I responding to my siblings? How am I getting on with my friends? Am I giving my friends a tough time? Am I kind of kicking back? Am I putting my friends, so-called friends, down? You know, so I think this really does require taking that little bit of time, and I can ask you to think about, what are your relationships like generally? Are the relationships in your life generally, are they nourishing? Or are they quite negative? Are they limiting? Are your relationships generally, are they healthy? Or is there something dysfunctional about them? And as you go on this self-development journey, what it always brings up for people is, okay, who are the people in my life? And to what degree are those relationships serving me? So there's a few different dynamics to it. There are going to be some people in your life, let's say family members, that you're probably, not always, going to have some kind of relationship with. There can be an opportunity to see if you can improve those relationships. Do you know what I mean? Can you improve some of these relationships? Let's say, for example, typical ones. Sometimes siblings, you know, you're growing up and you don't like each other, or you fight when you're kids. I was brought up a family of there's 3 boys, and then there was my sister came along. Like the 2 oldest boys always used to fight. Are they prepared to realize, you know what, used to fight because there was just a couple of years difference between us, and we just saw things? That's natural. That's naturally part of finding ourselves. Are we prepared to say, you know what, love you dearly and so on, and to give each other its space and recognize the differences? Because sometimes we just do have different styles and personalities. They say you can't change your family. So this thing about acceptance is the key here in all relationships. Are you prepared to accept that person is who they are and that they see the world slightly differently to you? Are you prepared to accept that? Because one of the first things is that we often are wanting to do is that we're always wanting to change somebody else. This comes all the time in all kinds of relationships. People will recognize this a lot often in marriages or in partnership relationships. You know, you start wanting to change somebody. So can you just accept, you know what, this is who you are. This is, you know, this is how my parents were. This is what they were taught. This is how my brother or my sister was. This is what they thought. And, you know, can we kind of come to a truce? You know, love you lots, and I can only cope with seeing you once every month, or love you lots, let's see if we can hang out all the time. And perhaps find that level that is healthy for all of you. And for some, that might mean you only meet at Christmas. For some of you, it means that you can hang out and speak every week over the phone. Sometimes when I'm coaching people on this term, I have to coach people to find strategies where they can find the right way of connecting and seeing their family members in a way that is conducive, and for them to come to some kind of a truce around this. So, but have that conversation. And my tip here is, have the conversation from heart. Don't have it from here, or from defense, or trying to prove that you're right or whatever. Genuinely say to them, you know what, I know that we didn't always go on. I get on. I know we always didn't see things eye to eye. I'm so sorry about that. Is there any way that we can build this fence? most times when you come from that space, we intuitively know when somebody's coming from that particular space. If you're coming from self-righteousness, it's going to be very, very hard to mend those relationships. So there might be a lot of work here and a lot of soul searching that some people might need to do. Then I would say, what are your other relationships like? So that's a little bit about the family, and you might be able to begin to have those conversations. And if this has stirred stuff for you, I'm going to really invite you, if you're listening to this, think about one personal conversation that you could perhaps have that where you think that would really improve that relationship. Think about a personal conversation. It might be with your parents. It might be with it might well be a sibling. It might well be with somebody else. It might even be somebody who's not even here anymore on this plane anymore. You know,
Right.
you know what? I forgive you. I love you. You know, sometimes because everything is energetic. Love you lots. It's very, very, very powerful. It's very, very, very profound. Then I think the thing is, let's talk a little bit about partnerships here, you know, relationships, because this is when well, let's maybe talk about friendships first, because then again, this is how the order of events. Friendships. Okay.
Uh-oh. I think we've briefly lost Rasheed for some reason. Sorry, guys. You'll have to stay with me until he comes back on. And here we go. You're back.
He's back. See, this it's so excited now. We're talking about friendships. The energy is all cut.
Oh, I think it's a bad line, unfortunately, and probably the downside of the internet, unfortunately, is that, you know, these things do happen. But I think he's back on board, so let's go. Fingers crossed, we're good to go.
Okay, we're back. I'm back, everybody.
Excellent.
Let's talk a little bit about friendships now. Initially, your friendships may have even, you know, if you take yourself way back to the schoolyard and so on, your friendships may have even been based on who it is that you were shy enough or bold enough to go up to, or you thought was cool enough and so on. Now, probably as an adult, you can kind of review that and think about which friendships have I got that seem to be serving me, that are very nourishing, and which ones aren't nourishing. And the first thing that you might want to do is consolidate the relationships that are really rich. So maybe it might even just be that you've got one friend that you really get on with or whatever. Connect with them, let them know how much you love them, you appreciate them, build on that particular relationship, see how it is you can support each other even more and so on. It might well be, this isn't a numbers game, friendships. You know, I often say, like, when it comes to social networking, often people have 1,000 followers but 0 friends. So we're talking about real quality relationships here. So start off with the relationships with good and nourishing, and ask yourself, in what way are those relationships nourishing? Are the other relationships nourishing? What can often happen is that many people find this phenomenon too, that as they get older and so on, some of the relationships, more recent relationships, they become more discerning. Some of the older relationships they may have had from way old, people might take the mick or what have you. Mm-hmm. To what degree do those relationships serve you? You might want to just wind them down a little bit. Maybe you only see those people socially or when you're playing sport. Maybe you don't want to talk about your life story about that because they're not sympathetic. You know, to what degree can you might need to spot the friends. Some friends are going to be good in every situation, talking about life, the universe, and everything else. Some friends are just good to go for a glass of wine with, or a pint with, or whatever, or to kick a ball around a thingy with, or to play Scrabble with, or whatever. Spot what friends work in what degree. And you know, in the same way that when you're going for a job interview, you might identify what qualities you want in an ideal job. Feel free to do the same thing in your friends and your circle. What kind of qualities do you want them as a human being? What kind of professional qualities do you want? And seek that out. You might have to, some people might need to go in this process. Some people often, you know, when I went on this whole personal, some people need to go. So, and remember that relationships, all relationships, some will last for a season, some will last for a lifetime. It's like being on a train journey. Some people last for one stop, some people are going the whole journey. Don't be grateful. Wish people well on their way. You know, if you have to let go of relationships, any kind, wish people well on their way. Don't hold on to that anger, because that negativity is going to kind of stick with you. So that's friendships. And the same thing with partnerships really here. Ask yourself, well, what are you wanting in a partner? You know, what do you want in a partnership now? One thing that can often happen in partnerships, I want to say something about partnership relationships that's quite unique about them. Very often when we first meet somebody, we're attracted to them and we tend to be looking for good in them, and we're looking for things attractive in them. And then we tend to have this habit where we love people for as long as they do what we want them to do, and then all of a sudden we fall out of love once they're doing or saying things that we don't really like. chances are is that when we first met them, we're only looking at those wonderful things, and we overlook the other things, and we ignore them, or we block them out because we're so caught up in the loving kind of stuff. My favourite word is the word unromantic, by the way, because sometimes in the, do you know what I mean? You can be unromantic about it. There's a lot of romance in being unromantic. You know, it's like the word disillusion. The illusion falls away, and you can see it for what it is. Appreciate that person for who they are. Are you prepared? If you love someone, do you really love who they are? And do you love who they are on that journey? And sometimes it might be even in that journey, there will be some relationships in which it is time for you to change the nature of the relationship, upgrade it, improve it, or let it go. Let them go. So sometimes when people, you might be perhaps watching this at home, and you might have had a recent, who's had this experience? You've been in a relationship, let's say in the past, and you thought at the time, oh, this is the best relationship ever, then you break up, you're really upset, and then 2 years later you think, you know what, that relationship really, you know.
Like, thankfully, actually that happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is the joy of life. This is the nature of life. Wish everybody well, realize that we're all on their own journey. There's a lovely book called The Prophet, and it's all about, you know, even like people, and there's this lovely phrase about it, that, you know, we all come into each other's life. Even your children, they say they're not your children, they're of you, but they're not your kids. You don't own them. They kind of come through you. And the same thing with your partner and so on. I think the more it is that you can really care about them and their well-being, the more it is that you can, I think my tip here in relationship, there's 3 things in a relationship. There's you, there's the other person, and then there's the space in between, the bond between you. Honor every single one of those 3 things. So love you, love the other person, allow the other person to be them, and then love this space in between. And if you honor each of those 3 things, you're likely to have a very rich relationship, basically, because then you'll also spot the times when any of those individual things need to be nurtured. And so that's that bit about that second segue of relationships and so on. And again, they interlink. The work you've done on yourself may mean that suddenly you're asking these questions about relationships.
Absolutely, and that's why you can see the clear progression, the logic, if you will, of, you know, if you don't have that self-love in that most positive way that you've just been talking about, you know, you don't have anything else to give to other relationships really around.
And it happens to a lot of the time. You know, let's say somebody's been, and it happens all the time, far more often than we have to think about. Somebody's been in an abusive, mentally or physically abusive relationship. Lots of those people don't feel that they have enough self-worth, and so for all that time when they don't feel their self-worth, they're accepting this abusive situation. But once their self-esteem has grown, their self-love, suddenly they can look up and realize, you know what, I am worth more, and then they're able to reach out for help and so on. So this is why sometimes you might need to go on that inner journey, or if you've had a relationship breakup, not because it's been abusive, sometimes in that period of time when you're by yourself is your opportunity to say to yourself, okay, where am I at right now, and to regroup and to reconnect yourself. And there might be people listening to this also who now are ready for that next relationship. You know, you've done your work, you've done the self-development. Maybe you're ready to then relate to build those relationships. Yippee! Love.
Just one thing, you mentioned a lot about acceptance, and you know, you have to accept, of course, yourself and who you are. You have to accept, you know, other people, your friends, your loved ones, your family, you know, that letting go, that acceptance, as you will, of people being who they are and just saying, right, that's who that person is, I love them anyway. You know, for all that they bring into my life. Well, what's the relationship between acceptance and then also like respect? I mean, do you think those things are the same, or is there like a slight difference there? I mean,
yeah, I think almost acceptance can be a stage before respect. Acceptance is that here I am, because the thing is in life, we'll often try and negate what's going on. It's raining outside. For a minute, I don't want to accept it. You know what? Reality is it's raining outside. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes we have this idea of how life should be. So the moment that you accept, you acknowledge. First of all, to notice, you acknowledge, aha, I've got these feelings. I accept that there are some things about this person that seem to resonate with me. I accept there are some things about this person that don't resonate with me. Acceptance isn't a passive thing. It's actually quite an alive kind of thing. You notice all these different things, but this person is who they are, and they are. And then that allows us perhaps to respect them. You know what, this is how the lens through which they see the world. This is the lens through which I see the world. And perhaps if I'm ready to accept, then I'm ready to listen and hear, and I can perhaps forge a deeper respect for who this person, who this person actually is. So I think there is this relationship here, but I think the moment that you kind of accept, and this is why, funny enough, people have a problem with this word accept, because we're so conditioned to try and change stuff. Accept. There's nothing, nothing is either good or bad. All these things are conditional. Everything is conditional. So once you recognize, okay, here I am, this is the nature of what's happened in my life. Okay, how do I feel about this? And then you can suddenly develop a fresh relationship to it. Life, ultimately, and I'm glad we're getting into this kind of territory, is that your whole experience of life will depend on your relationship with yourself and with life itself. If your relationship with yourself and life itself is rich, your life will be rich. It's as simple as that. Life embraces those who embrace life. In fact, life embraces everybody. But once you once you embrace yourself, you are kind of embracing life. If you're not embracing yourself, you are negating part of life. Once you embrace yourself, you are embracing life, and you're ready to embrace others. This is the funny subtlety. There's that quote, one of the quotes you put up there. If you're at peace with yourself, in fact, I think we misquoted it on one of the things. If you're at peace with yourself, you'll have no need to be in conflict with anybody else. That's what we're talking. If you're at peace with yourself, and this is where this love stuff relates on the global level, and this, open heart surgery talk I'm giving soon. If you're at peace with yourself, why are you going to create conflict with anybody else?
Well,
hello. It's not going to happen.
Doesn't make sense, does it?
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And if
That's
you do, then you're obviously not at peace. If you are,
you're not at peace. And of course, there's degrees, but this is the beauty. This is the beauty of this journey. It means suddenly one becomes available to love, because most love is, when we come to in this area, it's conditional. Oh, I love my partner as long as this. Oh, they didn't give me flowers on my birthday. Oh, they didn't do this. They didn't do. They're not doing this. Not doing that. That is not love.
Which leads me on to a good question, though. Then, in terms of that, day before Valentine's, I was just at the supermarket today doing some shopping. You know what? It was like a cog in the machine. They got the same aisles they used for Christmas, for Easter. Now it's Valentine's, and people. I saw a lot of guys looking all harassed and worried. Like looking at the presents and trying to think of what to get, etc. What do you think of all that? I mean, how does Valentine's Day fit into this? Like what, we all have to love on just one day? It seems kind of odd, eh?
It's a bit like any kind of love, my friend. The most useful, think about it as a parent, think about it as a kid. You can spend your money on somebody, or you can spend your time, your quality of time, and you can give them love. You might even give them both. Of all of those things, which is going to stay with somebody the longest? The fact that they were loved and they felt loved is the thing that's going to hold with them for the longest. So there is something, when one goes on this journey, one's got to kind of to decide to what degree you can play around with the paraphernalia about it. And you're going to need to, I mean, you mentioned something else, there's going to need to be in any relationship a communication. What does that love mean to each other? Does love mean that you give each other flowers on your birthday, or does love mean that you talk about stuff when things doesn't work or work out, or when you're slightly upset? You've got to have that kind of that dialogue and that conversation, because otherwise love for one person will mean telling that person when they've done something wrong, and love for somebody else means telling them something when they've done something right. Have that dialogue. The conversation is going to be really important in this kind of stuff. But yeah, there is all of this kind of trappings around love, and we are conditioned that, oh, you've got to give the person this. Actually, that's just all the trappings around it. It's just trappings. There's nothing wrong with it. It can be lovely, but people know when they really are loved. People know when they really are loved.
And it can be it's a trapping, as you call it, which is quite a good word, because it can also be a trap, can't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're trapped to think this is what your relationship's about,
Yeah, I often say too much content leads to discontent.
Absolutely. I mean, you see that with my kids. If you give them too much, and oops, we lost Rasheed again. But yeah, I see that, yeah, with the kids at Christmas. They get loads of presents.
It can be a trap. You're right. I've just come back. I was just in the cyber trap.
I was just saying that I carried on the conversation, but no, I was saying that I noticed that with with kids, again, you give in too much, and the whole issue around like things,
Yeah.
what they really value is the time. Just talking one thing before we move on, it's probably a good time. A really good idea for Valentine's gift I came across is actually not to buy anything, but you know what? Spend a bit of time writing a handwritten letter to your partner, your friend, whoever you want to give it to. Just outlining the things that you really appreciate about them and what they bring into your life. And that touches on everything we've been talking about today, I think, and I really, I love that, actually. So,
and that segues beautifully with the Global Love Letter campaign, isn't
Indeed.
it? And I know you've got something to show us, haven't you? I think you've got a slide of this Global Love. And once you bring that up, I'm going to tell people about the Global Love Letter campaign. So the Global Love Letter campaign is set by somebody who's a bit of a friend of Evolved Heart, Simon Paul Sutton, and I think a contact of Simon's. I think that they once happened upon a letter that they happened to find on a tube. I think a friend of Simon's happened upon this letter that was in a tube. It was kind of just marked anonymously, and it said, I love you, you're a wonderful person, blah, 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 and this anonymous letter. And this gave them this idea of this Global Love Letters campaign that you can see this website for. I wonder if we can see the URL.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, and so the idea of this is that for you to write a letter, or as many letters as you like, and then to, don't necessarily need to sign them or anything else, just sharing love and positivity, love you, you're a wonderful person, whatever it might well be, and just distribute them anywhere. You might put them underneath the post box, you might put them next to a book in the library, you might leave them in a supermarket aisle, you might send them anywhere, and so on. The idea of this is just that you're sharing the love, and instead of, that very often we focus our love on somebody very specifically, it's sending our love there out into the world and sending positive wishes, positive vibrations, if you like, into the world. And I just think that is really, really beautiful. So that's the campaign. I think it's their anniversary, I think this month, of the Love Letter campaign. If you scroll back down a bit, I think that's Miguel. I think Miguel found this letter. I think Miguel happened to find this letter on the tube. And I think that's what sparked this idea. And then of sending these letters everywhere and writing letters and so on all around the world. So I think this is a really fantastic campaign. Check out the website, globalloveletters.com, and get writing. Send a love letter. And Simon, I was speaking to Simon the other day, he's abroad. I think he's away at the moment. And Simon was saying to me, Rash, get writing these letters. And I'm now encouraging everyone, write the letters, send them out there. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, when when you told me about this and I came across the site, it really blew me away. And just the simplicity of it. You take the time, you write a letter, you address it like for you, leaving it on the tube or wherever. Just a few paragraphs and just say, look, I love you. It was a beautiful idea, and
very profound.
And who knows? I mean, it could make a
some mistake. There's no question. Tim, there's no question. And running it back to what we talked about, whether you're writing, and I think there's another side of this. If you're listening to this and you are struggling with your relationship to yourself, you might want to write a letter also let's add into this. You might want to write a letter to yourself. If you've had an issue with somebody in the past who's whatever, write that letter. You may not necessarily even post it or whatever. Write that letter. I forgive you. You're a lovely person. I recognize the good qualities about you. Energetically, there will be a shift because absolutely everything that ever has happened, there's going to be an energetic impact on you. So the benefit of you writing, you connecting, you sending well wishes is profound. Just think about, again, every piece of praise, how you felt, every piece of criticism, however you felt. So if you're the kind of person who you're always giving praise, positive feedback, just imagine how you're going to feel. You're going to be on top of the world, and that's going to impact your relationships in every area. And that brings us nicely to this third segue. How are you going to improve the relationships at work with your boss, all these relationships that you think that almost were insurmountable, or in the world? And I think this is a really, really good question. I've got, for example, at the moment, Tim, one of my clients is, I'm hoping you can hear me. I know you're busy reading all the I've got a client, for example, he wants to be a politician, when in fact he wants to be a politician. He's got some very big political ambitions. I've said to him, this work in terms of relationships, starting with the self and how one connects with everybody, is absolutely key. If you want to be a politician, if you really want to win people's hearts and minds, you need to be the master of relationships. You need to understand that everything is relationships. You've got to understand how to make people feel good about themselves. That is why we've called this website Evolved Heart. This is an evolution, if you like. It is an evolution from how it is once conditioned to actually, instead of being loathing who one is and feeling that I'm not good enough, to realize that I'm good enough in who I am and to branch out. You know, just like a flower branches out, a tree branches out. This is the invitation. That's what living life with an evolved heart is. It means meeting love, living lovingly, loving you, loving what you're doing, loving others too. So in the workplace, can you, if let's say you're in a workplace, this happens a lot of the time. If you're a boss, you know what? Tell the team how great they are. I was in the other day for, doing a team away day. I do lots of these. And the team started off, this team happened to work in the field of mental health challenges. The first thing the boss told them, what a great job they were doing, how much he really respected them, what they'd done well. This is amazing. You could see everybody's room light up. He said, I don't feel as though I've got the answers. I know that we're a team. Suddenly the love in the room. I got them also to do an exercise where I got them all to give each other really positive feedback, to feed this sense of love. So if you're a boss, really be mindful about everything that you say. Use those team meetings to start off with giving positive news, giving positive feedback. Have those regular one-to-ones. Tell somebody what they've done really well. Ask them themselves, what areas do they feel that they need to be developed? They're probably going to know, and they're probably going to be honest with you. This is going to build that relationship with them. How is it that you grow? If you in your turn, if your boss shouts at you, does that get the best result of you or not?
Right.
Be smart about this. Don't be stupid, and don't feel that working from the heart isn't good management. It's shrewd management. Hearts and minds. You cannot be, if you've got any ambitions of being a good leader, if you think that you can make an impact without understanding how to win hearts as well as minds, it's never going to happen. You've got to win people's hearts and their minds. Again, if there, how can you build relationships with colleagues? Maybe accept they see things differently to you. Give them some positive feedback. Also, sometimes you might just need strategies that just don't go there. Instead of, if you feel you're going to have, if you can't say something good, sometimes there's a lot in that thing. Don't say anything. Be silent. Be still. Do you necessarily always need to say something? Let it be.
No, that's absolutely true. And I think everyone who looks at this with an open mind, and if you look back in your work, the bosses who stand out are the ones who've given that respect and who have that openness about them.
Completely.
And they're willing to take, but they're also happy to give,
Completely.
And I mean, I think everyone appreciates a manager, a boss, a colleague like that.
And give feedback. Don't wait. Give positive feedback. One of the things I like about Simon in the Global Love Letter campaign, he'll be in the shop, he'll be chatting to somebody, and he'll smile at them. Smile. This starts to smile at people when they go past. Smile, don't snort. Notice that. Have you ever had the experience where you go past people and somebody smiles, somebody says hello? And notice that time, it's raining on it's a platform and so on, and the train's late. Suddenly, this is usually happening because we're usually in our condition thingy, the train's late. Suddenly there's an announcement, it's a funny announcement, and then there's a little bit of a smile, and then suddenly people start chatting to each other. Don't wait for that announcement for you to be nice to somebody, for you to smile to somebody. Wish somebody a good day. Ask them how they're doing genuinely. Wait and hear their response. Be available. This situation with my client, and they got some positive feedback, I pointed out to the person who ran this club, and they gave the positive feedback to my client. I pointed out to her how important that positive feedback was and what an impact it was, because I wanted her to have that feedback of how magical it was about her. And I do this all the time to people when I see it happen. It's very potent. Most people, it's those moments that people say they make their day, when somebody said thank you to the postman and the postman's dropped something else. Thank you so much. It's so kind of you to go that extra mile and to check how I was. It's not the big things that make the impact in our lives. Sometimes it's the asides. It's the somebody who gives us a positive word of encouragement.
Yep. No, I see that, and also it's the things that don't take a lot. You know, that extra thought doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
You know, just smile to someone and say, "Hi, good morning.
Yeah.
Oh, good to see you. How are you doing?" And
Yeah.
but as you said, seriously, sincerely, and like, waiting for the answer. I mean, not moving on. You know.
It's like this brings us on to Rasheed's golden rule: be genuinely interested in everyone you meet.
Mm. Man, shame about Rasheed's connection. I'm sure he'll be joining us soon as well. So, but as you're saying, be genuinely interested, and I think all of us probably agree about that.
Hey, I cut out just doing my golden rule.
Tell us the golden rule. Let's go.
Rasheed's golden rule: be genuinely interested in everyone you meet, and everyone you meet will be genuinely interested in you. This is an almost universal truth. Be genuinely interested in everyone you meet, and everyone you meet will be genuinely interested in you. There'll be sometimes a few people who cognitively, where they're at, or just what's going on, they won't hear it or what have you. But in 95% of cases, if you genuinely are interested in people, they will be genuinely interested in you. What most frustrates most of the time is that they haven't been genuinely met or honoured or respected. That's where your word respect comes in. When you do, you will profoundly change every single relationship. I have another saying that what people say about you when you leave the room is your job whilst you're in the room. And you can control that. This is the power of this stuff. You can control it. It's not chance. It is not chance how everybody feels about you in your life. That is not chance. You can control that. Once this mindfulness starting from the self, so you can see once one does that work on oneself and one embraces oneself, one realizes one has value and that I bring value, and then you can connect with people, you can let go of the negative relationships, you can wish people well, whether they're in your life, whether they're the other side of the world. It doesn't mean you've got to have all these people around you. It means that you just accept them and you keep people at the distance, the proximities that is healthy. Planets keep each other planets at the different proximity to which it is healthy for them. You know, plants, everything in the universe does. Doesn't mean that everybody needs to be in your inner circle. Things will have different relationship space to each other. So that might be the space, might be the issue here. You know, that space thing. But then being loving and meeting life in that space, and you'll find that the quality of all your relationships improves, and it then might mean that you're open to new relationships and you're ready. So for some of you, it's going to be about actually what are the new relationships I'm wanting to invite in, work-wise, personally, friendship-wise, and all the rest of it. This is the second bit about what's a professional conversation that you could be having in your work that could improve a relationship. What's that conversation? This is one of the things in my book, Soul Trader. I talk about all these conversations. You know, conversations will be a large part of it. Very often, people never have these conversations from the heart. We'll do a whole special talk some point about how can we communications. How can we communicate from the heart?
And also, the thing we need to look at is there's so many misconceptions about that, and oh, it makes me sound weak, or you know, people take advantage, but it's the contrary. Yeah, I mean, it really displays like strength of character and self-confidence.
Hugely,
you can do that.
Hugely.
Yeah, as you have just demonstrated today.
Ultimately, you know, this is on the end game here. If nobody knows how much time they've got on the clock, and let's talk about this thing about relationship. We talked about partners, friends, work, and all these things that we spend so much time rushing around for. But when all's said and done, when people are walking through the graveyard or whatever, and they see a tombstone or they see that urn or whatever, or they read an obituary or they heard about you, what are going to people say about you? And that's your job now. So whether it is that you die tomorrow or the next day, or I die tomorrow, or whatever, if I die tomorrow, I should have a sense now, broadly speaking, of what the world thinks of me. That's my job today. You cannot wait till tomorrow. Never let it wait until tomorrow. It's today's. That's today's task. That's today's task. If we're up for it, that's today's task. Life, that's what transforms, you know, that's what Gandhi talks about when he's talking about be the change that you want to see in the world. That's exactly what he means. Be it, embody it, being it, embracing, accepting yourself, meeting people with a smile, with warmth, and so on. It's very simple. These things that these people talk about, you know, we put them up on a pedestal. No, it's very immediate. It's very subtle. It's every day. It's very, 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 very simple. Babies and so on do it naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't help but respond
Yeah, you can't help it.
because, and it's genuine, which is why I said people have really fine-tuned bullshit detectors.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to be genuine about it, better just not to do it, right?
This is the invitation of life. Life is, so for people who are watching this and feel that, in the time I've had a tough time and so on, that will happen. Some weather conditions, some are arid, some are lush. That is the nature of life. But when we realize this, it's possible then to develop this richer relationship with life, and it means that whatever has happened from this moment on, relationship to life can be very, very, very rich, and it might be all of those difficult times have made you even more empathetic to life and to the human condition itself.
Awesome. Well, I think we've come up to our self-imposed deadline, but you know what? I think today's live chat, I personally found it really enjoyable, and I'm sure everyone who's going to be watching this and who's watched it would have as well. Such an important topic. Yeah.
I want to say one last thing about that. It's quite funny that we haven't taken any questions, and I want to leave this, and it's kind of apt. Love is the only answer to every question. Whatever your circumstance at work, whatever your impasse in the business, whatever your circumstance problem in the family or past issues, love is without question the answer to that scenario. I've no doubt about that. Love is the only answer to every question. It's the only, it's the solution to every situation. It is the medication, it is the destination, and it should be your vocation. If you do that, if you realize that love is the destination, it's the route, it's the vocation, it's the medication, it's certainly the liberation.
Yeah.
So why the Beatles, the first 9 words of All You Need Is Love. Love, 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 love. Beautiful. So that's a lovely moment to leave it on. So we're just sending out this beautiful love stuff into the world. Enjoy your Valentine's Day. If you haven't got a partner, have a lovely romantic evening in with yourself tomorrow, is Rasheed Okunlara's invitation.
Yeah, pamper yourself. And I'm going to put up the link to the Global Love Letters campaign, I think, on the blog. So if everyone has time, write a letter to a stranger and just sign it off, I love you, and address it on the envelope to you, isn't it? And just leave it somewhere. Someone will pick it up and open it. Brilliant.
Should we mention next month?
Yes, yeah. What day did we say? March the 12th.
March the 12th, which I think is Tuesday. We're going to be talking about spring cleaning your life. So, there'll be, and this leads on beautifully, isn't it, Tom? There'll be some people now who, we often get our lives full of content, and this may well have brought all sorts of issues, and you might now be in a point where you're, spring, we often think about physically spring cleaning, but actually, can we simplify life? Can we make some space in our life? How is that you can spring clean your entire life? Are the people that new relationships to bring in, things to let go of? Can we simplify? Can we enhance, improve in some way? We're going to be talking about spring cleaning your life next time.
Absolutely.
7 p.m.
As usual, we'll put up the details in a couple of weeks on the blog post and on Facebook, etc. But yeah, 7 p.m. as usual. Next month, spring cleaning your life. So yeah, look out for that one.
Wicked, thank you so much.
As usual, man, it's been great.
As they say, namaste. Is that what they say in some, whatever, love in every language. However many languages you can say it in, love's all you need.
Absolutely. As a great Lenny Kravitz said, isn't it? You got to let love rule. I love that track. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I like it.
Cool. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining in, and until the next time, we'll see you next month.
Right, let's end the broadcast there.
All right. Cheers.